next speaker, his name is Vic Arulchandran. He is the Chief Operating Officer of one of the companies that I think is doing some of the most innovative things in the tokenization of digital assets space. Recently announced a $20 million investment led by the London Stock Exchange Group, and that you should ask him questions about why. And also they, together with companies like 2030, recently did this amazing test of issuing 2030's shares, equity, on the London Stock Exchange through their liquidity platform, Turquoise, settled blockchain. This is real pioneering work being done. Now, one of Vic's favorite books was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So there's no one better to tell us about how Libra could become a currency and what are the risks. Please welcome Vic.
I'm still not rich, by the way. So I think a lot has been said so far about history of money, the structure of Libra, how Libra and Calibra operate, and how this kind of ETF structure is formed. So I'm not going to go over all of the sort of stuff that have been covered so far. We can go into some of those in the panel as well. I think what's very interesting for me is the potential of Libra to be a currency that is used in the wider economy. There has been mention of banking the unbanked. I think banking the unbanked is a wider problem about getting data, understanding what that data means about individuals who don't have bank accounts, understanding what their commercial businesses are if they have any, and then figuring out how to understand proxies for lending or providing credit. So I'm not sure about the connection between unbanked and using Libra. So that's a question rather than a doubt. We're seeing lots of other initiatives apart from Libra at providing things like stable coins or providing other type of currencies using a blockchain protocol. So of course, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ether, etc., very well known. We're very familiar about the potential shortcomings of these currencies for becoming widely used in society. One of the main ones being that you can't pay your tax in a crypto yet. I think with Libra, the way that they've structured Libra from a technology perspective is that apart from being a token, it can also be replicated in the future in the form of a different token. So while Libra is set up to be this kind of ETF basket currency type structure, which in the future could potentially become stabilized, and you can envision a future where maybe the ETF problem is solved and Libra is a stable currency that can be used in the wider population. You can also imagine that the same technology structure that's used to create the Libra token can also be used to create many other different types of tokens. Now, what would happen in that kind of future if you have one token that's stabilized on a network and central banks become interested in creating their own tokens on that network to represent or in fact be central bank money? I'm not posing this question because I have an answer. I'm literally posing the question because I actually don't know. I think we can speculate because central banks such as Bank of England, Central Bank of Australia, etc., they've been experimenting with potentially using cryptocurrency to peg or using tokens on a network to peg central bank money to this kind of token, something called a stable coin, which I'm sure everybody is familiar with. There are kind of two aspects of it. There's the stable coin which can be pegged to a central bank currency, and there's the stable coin that can be pegged to a commercial bank currency. Now, in a future where Libra is used as a means of payment, again, posing another question, how could this be used in the grand scheme of financial services where you've got a means of payment, but then you've got commercial bank money, which is fundamental for the workings of the economy, but then you've got also a central bank currency which backs the commercial bank activity? I think it's an interesting question and something which I think Facebook purposely created Libra to raise some of these questions, especially when you read the white papers. I know that some of the white papers are quite technical. They're very interesting, and the technology piece is not really that difficult to understand. It's quite straightforward. It's more about the questions they're raising with the structure of Libra and some of the questions that they're raising, particularly around this type of ETF structure. I mean, as soon as the Libra paper came out, regulators all over the world started coming down on it and saying it's a security, which is true. But it does have the potential to create a stable, tokenized or token form of currency in the long term. In addition to that, probably the last 2 points I'll leave you with is there are some precedents for Libra as potentially a currency. So there was the SDR, the special drawing right, which was created by the IMF. This was backed by a basket of currencies. There was also something called the European Currency Unit, which was also backed by a basket of currencies. These two things were actually discussed by our CEO and Jana in a paper they published recently. These two precedences are very interesting because they are international type bodies trying to create something which is a reserve currency or something which is a unit of a reserve currency using a basket of underlying currencies. And this is very interesting I would urge everybody to go and read about these two things if they want to learn a bit more about potentially how Libra was formed as well. Now, if Libra is successful, this wouldn't be the first type of initiative that has aimed at creating a new type of currency that can be used in the wider population. However, it would be the first type that is on some kind of distributed database. Now, I'm personally still a proponent of decentralization rather than distribution. However, I see the benefits of distribution. And I think another question we have to ask is, in the future, if we're using a payment system for cross-border payment activities, does that really need to be distributed? Or will we achieve the maximum benefit by it being decentralized? And how would that token be secured on the network? At the moment, if you look at Libra, based on an underlying basket of currencies, due to the fluctuation in the underlying basket, if there's any profit to be made, it gets taken by the foundation. It's not passed on to the holders. But that fluctuation, that variation in the price of the underlying is used to stabilize the variation in the price of Libra. And I think it's quite an interesting topic, that particular one, because if there's going to be any stabilization of Libra, what's really happening to those profits that are going out of the network? So those are the 2 points I wanted to leave you with. It's quite brief. And please feel free to ask me any questions while I'm on the panel later on as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. As I say, in addition to being one of the most brilliant people in the field, I also think he has one of the best beards in blockchain. Thank you very much. Oh, that got a round of applause on this. Has your beard ever had a round of applause before? Give his beard a round of applause. Brilliant LBCF.